Welcome back, everyone, to Roompact's ResEdChat podcast. Every episode, if you're new to the show, our team of hosts brings you timely discussions on a variety of topics of interest to hired professionals who work in and with university housing, residence life, residential education, whatever you might call it. And our topic today is talking about career transitions, kind of in and out of residence life and into student affairs, vice versa, whatever kind of is going on for you. We're going to be talking about how to navigate that as best you can. We've kind of explored this topic in a variety of sort of angles and perspectives, and folks, kind of reflecting on their journeys. And I think it's always time well spent to get the stories of a lot of folks who have, made these kind of transitions in and out of residence life, to wherever they're going. We've had folks that have gone to private industry or, from vastly different institution sizes or public and private. All these sort of things are all kind of in the mix. But I think, using the vehicle of our stories, we can really get some good insights, some good tactics and advice and resources and all that good stuff. So I have Cory with me here today. We'll start as we always do. Cory, if you want to give kind of a brief overview of your professional background, and then we'll kind of take a beat and then kind of talk more about your current role as we start to kind of talk more about the transitions and things that you've done throughout your career.
Absolutely. Well, hello, Dustin. Hello, everyone. Thank you. It's great to be here. My name is Cory Shapiro, and I serve as the Assistant Dean of Students at Arizona State University on one of our many campuses. I have been at Arizona State University for the last 19 years. The first 18 has been in various mid-level positions as Assistant Director of Residential Life, Associate Director of Residential Life, various other kinds of assistant director roles. But yeah, residential life has been my background, like I'm sure many of the individuals listening to this. And just in the last year, I've really been experiencing a lot outside of the world of housing. In fact, 2 of the months during the summer when I had my role on an interim basis, I didn't do any housing for 2 months, which was probably the first time in many, many years, if ever, that I've ever could say that. But stepping into the permanent role, I did regain some oversight of housing as part of my assistant dean role. And I've been doing that all year, working with on and off campus students, working with our university wide student governments and our multicultural communities of excellence, and really just providing support to all of our student services on my campus. But working with the residence hall, still supervising some of our mid-level professionals. Um, I've had opportunities to step out and step in on multiple times over my career. Prior to ASU, I spent 4 years in the great state of Ohio working at Ohio State in housing. And prior to that, I was in Arizona, where I worked in retail management for a year, not knowing I'd ever consider continuing my passion for housing, where, yes, I was an RA in my undergrad, like many others have. But I love the world of housing, but I also know the potential if you're outside of housing as well at the same time. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, yeah, I appreciate you coming on because I think, yeah, you've got a great story to kind of, farm some insights from and reflections and everything. And I guess it's interesting for you to really kind of put a fine point on this if folks, didn't catch it because I wasn't like, kind of zeroed in on it myself. But I think a distinguishing thing for you is it sounds like you made a lot of sort of, transitions within the same institution, a variety of roles and titles and different things. And I think that's even something to clarify of like, assistant director of blank, even within the same, like, residence life, department could be, vastly different kind of vibe and everything. But that is something where like, you may be, working in an institution, you love it, you love where you live, the people that you work with, you enjoy and all those sort of things, but you're looking to, do something else. So I think that's kind of a, sort of a wrinkle to this that I think will be interesting again to kind of look into. But if you would talk a little bit more about like your current role, because it sounds like, I mean, obviously, like you had it in an interim basis, and then you, got it permanently. So if there's anything kind of there, I guess you want to reflect on. But it sounds like you've got kind of a wider scope of, your position now that certainly builds upon so much of what you did before. But and maybe even like the idea of like how you kind of got into that position specifically, if you want to kind of talk and kind of take us in kind of chronologically, like how did you get into this position? What does it kind of entail currently? And I guess anything else that sort of makes sense in kind of the scope of our discussion here around kind of transitions in residence life and student affairs.
Often, the longer you're at an institution, the more committees you're in, the more colleagues you have in other departments and student services at Arizona State University. When you work in housing at our Tempe campus, you're often really a specialist where you're the housing person at the Tempe campus. But when you're at one of the other three campuses, you are very much a generalist and you're doing a lot more than housing on a day-to-day basis. Over my time at ASU, I spent the majority of my time at the Tempe campus, but I have been an assistant director and associate director at every campus in the greater Phoenix area, our Polytechnic campus, our West Valley campus, our downtown campus. And it actually really helped set me up for success to eventually become the associate director for all four campuses. Um, but my knowledge and my experience at the different campuses, we had an opening during the summer on a short term basis as one of our assistant deans was out of the office for several months, right around move in, right around kicking off the year, right around setting those tone for the first 6 weeks. And I was asked to step into that until she got back. And right around that time, when I was about to go back to my associate director role in housing, um, a, another position opened up permanently. And after having already done it for 2 months, enjoyed that experience, but missed housing very much. I was offered that opportunity to go to one of, I know I'm not supposed to have favorites, but I love the West Valley campus because it really does have a small campus feel, designed in the image of Oxford. 5,000 students on the campus, 1,000 of which live on campus, and I helped develop the residential experience more than 10 years ago, and now we have three residence halls there. I was there right when we opened our second one, and getting to be a part of that experience all over again while also providing some direction to the housing team at our downtown campus as well as West Valley, and providing guidance to all the other campuses through being on the housing leadership team still. So I'm getting to do a lot of what I love to do in housing while spending my time walking around as a teen on the West Valley campus. I get the best of both worlds. And again, a lot of it was building the relationships, knowing what goes into student services beyond just housing. In fact, when I was at West Valley 12 years ago, I oversaw all that orientation programs in addition to housing. So I became the person a lot of first year students would see when they were arriving to the university. I was greeting them for orientation and then welcoming them into the residence halls. And it all worked well together. Whereas at Tempe, being such a large campus, there's no way I could have done both of those at the same time. So now I get to provide these experiences to other professional staff and set them up in a similar way that someone did for me many years ago.
Yeah, and I think that there's great details there. So I want to kind of expand on that as you're sort of just reflecting on the transitions that you've had in your career. The idea of, like where you are now, you're in a, kind of smaller and more intimate environment. You can touch a lot of different aspects of the student experience. And I guess, was that something that you've always known that you were looking for, or you sort of refined sort of like what was the sort of journey to know that like that, this role at this time was more of what you're looking for? 'Cause it sounds like after working at a lot of the different campuses, maybe you kind of knew better what you were looking for. I'm guessing maybe like you got a lot of different experiences. So you knew maybe like, oh, I want more of this, I want less of that. And like you're able to kind of keep refining as you go on, but like certainly just I don't want to put too many words in your mouth kind of thing, but like I guess tell me more about like how you were able to sort of like, figure out like what the next thing could or should be, like what you kind of learned through each kind of, transition. Because it sounds like, yeah, you kind of ended up in a place where it sounds like you're getting a lot of what you're looking for, both in like the role, the institutional environment, like all those sort of different pieces. So, like, what was kind of the journey to get to this point, like in terms of just like knowing better what it was you were exactly looking for?
Dustin, this is a great question, and there's a lot to it. I know when I was a community director or a residence hall director, I thought, well, I'm going to be a res lifer for life. Therefore, I'm going to be a community director. I'm going to be an assistant director. I'm going to be a director. I'm going to be an AVP. That's not the realistic path for many of us. But I never really expected to get off that path. And so when I got orientation, that was out of the blue. During the pandemic, I actually oversaw all COVID initiatives for university housing. And that was one of the final straws that eventually that helped get me the FaceTime with people from all over the university, where I became an associate director during the pandemic because of that. I had no intention of being a dean. Yet at the same point, I remember saying multiple times that, well, associate director for 4 years, I'd love to be the next director of residential life. And I've told that to our director. I'm like, I have no rush for her to go anywhere because I love her. But I would like to be set up for success, that I could be the logical next person. And then I remember saying, but the one exception would be becoming a dean over at the West Valley campus. So I always knew when I left this West Valley campus that this is a place that I feel at home. This is a place where this you can build the rapport with the students in such a different way, that you know all of them by name, that you can show up to events out of the blue and they're excited to see you. They all know who you are. And I just have never had a role like that outside of when I was a community director. I know I made the effort to create that when I was an assistant director or associate director, but with literally 400 plus community assistants and 17,000 residents living on campus, that wasn't realistic for me. Now it is, but it doesn't mean that I don't want to be back in housing full time down the road. I think this is a great take a breather for a little bit while doing something different, while still having um, dabbling in the housing world and being involved both at ASU and elsewhere. I do. I'm excited for what I'm doing. I hope to get to do it for several years and eventually make my way back into housing full time.
Yeah, and I guess what I'm hearing there is like, you know, being open to possibilities, open to something else and what, what could be. And obviously that like, yeah, like working in housing residence life is like a deep part of the core of your kind of professional being kind of thing. So like you're always going to resonate with doing that work, being open enough to not think that that is exclusively what you can or should do. And I think also the idea of like making the most of where you're at, or making sure that wherever you're at, that it is at least like giving you something like that's, I guess, kind of an undercurrent for me, I guess, of what I'm hearing is like, and I'll kind of try to segue this, I think, into my next question. But the idea of like, you would hope that, you know, from the sounds of it, just like with your journey, like that idea of like you're getting so much of what what is meaningful for you professionally where you are now, but you know that you also can be nurtured and fulfilled, elsewhere, whether it would be, duty is thrust upon you kind of thing of like, we need you, Cory, to do, like work, director of residence life somewhere else. You'd be like, I know that I can, do good work there. I could be fulfilled, whatever. Um, Cause I guess it's the idea of, like you were saying, like you thought that you were going to be locked in, like on a path, res life for life, traditional kind of like steps up the ladder. You were open to other possibilities. Those have also given you other things that have been very meaningful to you. Um, so I think if maybe you can kind of ground all of my sort of synthesis or, kind of observations of your journey, how have you observed other people navigating these things? Because I think it's either like people are too rigid, they think they've just got to lock in and, stay the course, but then that can maybe you know, end up with some negatives, or they're always trying to jump to the next new shiny new thing, like, so just any reflections on like the observations that you've seen of others, because I think that's obviously, it should be informing us of seeing how other people navigate things the way that you might want to try to emulate, or just sort of like cautionary tales of other people. If it's just like, oh, you didn't, you never stuck around anywhere long enough to maybe get a really good idea, was just kind of like, kind of knee jerk stuff. So like anything that comes to mind, I guess, of like how you've seen others, navigate their sort of careers and how that's sort of helped inform, your own choices.
Dustin, you just said it so well. I mean, for me, I've come from a generation where I I value being in one place for a while. I've been to only three schools my entire career, 4 years, 4 years, and going on almost 20 years now. On the other hand, I don't expect that from other people. And you're right. I have had many of my staff who would come for 1 or 2 years and they think they've been there now forever, which is funny in a lot of ways. But at the same point, I get it. Like a lot of people are looking for different things than I was looking for when I was an entry level professional or a young mid level professional. And so I know if you're somewhere long enough, you can eventually get involved with the change, but they want that involvement right away, especially our younger professionals. But I don't think there's anything wrong with if it's not the right fit to go try something else. I just would hope that they'd give it long enough and try to be a part of, like, embrace the culture of wherever they're going. Hopefully they find they love it and they're there for at least a couple years, maybe before that next opportunity. That's another thing. I didn't have the need or desire to necessarily move up. I was an assistant director for 14 years. And I know a lot of the young professionals in my department asked me, how did you do it for so long? I continue to challenge myself. I continue to have different opportunities as an assistant director, whether doing leadership and development, whether going to a different campus, whether being a different part of our Tempe campus. I think I'm the only person in the department who can say I was responsible for every single residence hall at every single campus at some point during my time. But that's not the norm anymore. And so I think everyone needs to know what it is that they want to get out of an experience. And if they're not getting it, they either need to ask some good questions to supervisors or to themselves and figure out, can they get that there? And often they can if they ask the right question, if they take the right initiative. But if they can't, well, maybe they should look somewhere else. And I know that's something that's very common today. But here's a warning for everyone: the grass is not always greener on the other side. I've had staff members leave ASU when they were disgruntled about how something was, and they realized in housing at another school it's exactly the same, or they need to change their way of thinking and they want to come back, or they go to another department outside of housing and they find that some of what they had that they were frustrated about actually was better than living off campus doing something very different in another department. So these are just some of my immediate reflections based on what you just said, because I do see it.
Yeah, that's what you'd hope, like you said, like people don't make too kind of quick knee jerk kind of decisions about like, oh, well, it's just, it's the grass is greener somewhere else because it's different, it's better, whatever. Like, they can do some examining sort of like your context, your environment, what's available to you, and explore like yeah, like how you could sort of adjust your role or like talk to people or get involved sort of in collateral things. But and certainly, yeah, that sometimes if you're like just in like a toxic environment, like try to, get out of that as soon as you can. But I think it is the idea of like we might be too quick to think that like, oh, this place is awful and yeah, it's toxic. I'm just gonna go. It's like, and uh especially, yeah, that idea if you like get out of residence life, maybe you're like feeling burnt out or whatever. um and then like if you're like, oh, it's gonna be better, working in this other area, but then it's like, oh, you liked it because you only got little like, forays into it every once in a while. Cause I could think about like, orientation or something. It's like, oh, you work in res life and we do some orientation stuff or whatever else. And you're like, you know what? I want to do orientation all the time. And it's like, that might ruin it for you because you liked your little doses of it, but then not like, cause I think about that a lot with writing where I've had like opportunities sometimes where like, oh, we do want to like, do more like writing all the time as your full-time job and be just constantly writing all day, every day. And it's like, once I've been like presented with it, I'm like, I don't know if I could do that, honestly. I do like writing a lot, but I don't know if I could do that all the time. So, like, that's what kinda came to mind is that idea of, like, you'll get kind of maybe tempted in sort of like a moment of, yeah, like, frustration with, in one thing or another. You go off and it's like, "Okay, well, now I'm just doing this one thing all day, every day," and it sort of, like, loses its magic because, like, I don't just get to, like, have fun during an orientation welcome session. It's like, no, you have to do all the grunt work of like, the procedural administrative, aspects of it or whatever. So it's just like, yeah, like every job has aspects that you're going to like more than other aspects of it. And I think so much of this, I get, if you can kind of expand on this, it seems like so much of this is going to be around as the individual, certainly just being very communicative, being curious, being open, like those sort of things. But then, like, so take either angle of this of just maybe on the individual level, or like, when you've been in like leadership positions, overseeing people, like how you sort of like receive that, how you try to like help facilitate people to kind of like, maybe move them more towards things that they're gonna, get some good experiences with, get some good insights from. Um, like, do you feel like that, like the idea of like, you'd hope that you just have good communication between both sides in that equation, and then like, I don't know if you have anything specific you would reflect on either in those instances how you've pursued things that sort of helped expand your horizons and better inform your choices, and or how as a leader you need to try to help, facilitate those kind of journeys.
Sure. Yeah, I think a lot of it ties even to professional development. What ways in which everyone is staying engaged. And that doesn't necessarily mean go to a conference, but that does mean seeing what else is out there and what can tie into your role. I remember at one point in my career, I used to spend a couple hours, 2 or 3 hours a week, in a different department while still working for housing, and I at least got an experience that was something very different. One year I helped develop at ASU. I worked with directly with our vice president for student affairs to create a summer camp for students at one of our campuses that was not Tempe, and just getting the opportunity to work with so many departments that had nothing to do with housing. Recognizing that this was not all the students were part of a residential camp. Some of them were day camps, and I learned so much about the academic side, and we worked very closely with a lot of other departments, not just the academic ones. And I know for me, that was just one example. And I see that from some of my staff who are looking for, some of them want to be involved with affinity. So we get them on game day committees. Some of them want to get more involved with student activities. Not that they're not already doing a lot of that in housing, but we'll get them on different committees or to go spend a few hours here or there. And I remember at every school I've worked at, there's been opportunities that if someone was passionate about a certain thing and they didn't see that in their day-to-day work, talk to a supervisor, see if they can get that experience somehow. And as I reflect to master's programs, graduate programs, I don't necessarily think just because someone has a master's degree, they should be a shoe in for a role over a bachelor's degree candidate for a position. But I do say when they have had internships and practicums and different experiences and know how to tie theory to practice, those are some of those skill sets that a lot of our staff who didn't go to graduate school won't otherwise have. And it will make our staff more marketable for different opportunities. But I think it all comes down to making sure to talk to your supervisor about those professional development opportunities. And if it's not going to a conference, maybe it is getting involved with the professional association and being on one of their committees on a regional level. There's so many ways to see what else is out there. And depending on what you've experienced, you might want to give something a try full time at some point, especially if you're so passionate about whatever it is.
Yeah, that's what I think, like just awareness, information, like the ability as, an individual in this field, any profession really, I guess, but like being able to make informed choices about like, as you're applying and interviewing, like, from the jump, like knowing like, okay, this type of position based on what it describes and the institution, its size, if it's public, private, whatever, like I know from the jump that this is going to be more aligned with what I'm looking for. And then I can, ask the right questions during an interview to make sure that my sort of understanding is correct. So like if you can keep refining that through, yeah, like, volunteering and doing something at your institution or with a professional organization, or, anything else that you might pursue, like, um, yeah, you're just like, you're honing, I know, like for me, I even like worked with a career coach, like just like an independent person, and they would help me to like to better articulate more precisely, what it is that I'm looking for. Like I want to work as part of a team, and like I found that I enjoy working on a, at a smaller company versus a larger one. And then like I've worked at some that are like either publicly traded companies or, eyeing that as sort of like a eventuality. And it's just like I don't like that as much. I do like sometimes kind of the scrappier, smaller, like startup kind of, organizations. And even sometimes like a team at like a college university kind of has that vibe. If it's just like, depending on how they're funded or, if they are just like newer or whatever, like if you can know that, and just keep honing that and like refining and having like really clear intentionality about, you know, what best role you serve on a team, what type of team, what size team, like, yeah, it's all time well spent to be doing that sort of like almost like firsthand primary research of like, what it is that I'm looking for, um, and I think what I'm also hearing from you is like, you know, I'm just imagining who might be listening to this, whether it is like the person on this journey, like making these transitions, or the people that might be helping to, supervisors and stuff that might be facilitating these journeys. So like, that professional development piece, like, I think there's always that right balance of like, certainly, the individual has to take agency and sort of ownership of their own journey, but like, how do you maybe present opportunities or give options or try to encourage folks to like get involved with different things so that maybe there's no shortage of things to do, at an institution or elsewhere of like, professional organizations and stuff. So I think like trying to at least do your part as somebody who might be needing to nurture the professional development of individuals to try to like, present them with things that could be, uh, available for them to look into. So on that piece though, as we're starting to wrap up, like other like advice, and again, just take, whatever sort of angle perspective you might want on this, but like just advice for, navigating career transitions, in or out of residence life. Like what advice would you give to folks as we're kind of winding down here?
I mean, I think one of the big things is you don't have to go to your supervisor, but at least go to a mentor. Have someone that is there to make sure that you have a cheerleader, that you have someone to help you, maybe even think outside the box. What were you most passionate about? I know I have staff members who've gone to be either flight attendants or teachers or honestly taking a year off and just traveling in between jobs. And they're doing what honestly their heart tells them to do. Now, some of them have reached out afterwards saying, okay, I'm ready to come back. So I think you need to know exactly what you want. And if you can't get that in your current role, you have so many skill sets that are transferable right off the bat. Know what those skill sets are, what some of those challenges that you've learned to overcome, and how you can articulate that. I mean, yes, a coach could be a wonderful way to start, but you need to know exactly what you want as you look and see what opportunities are out there. They may have those opportunities at your institution. It may be in another state or country closer to family. Maybe you're looking for two careers, like you have a dual search because of a partner. There could be so many other things that you're looking at, but you definitely need to make sure that you're doing what you want to do and that you're passionate for it. I recognize burnout is certainly out there, but you also need to figure out, is this something you can resolve by staying in your department? Because sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes it's no. But I mentioned it before, the grass is not always greener on the other side. So I've seen staff go outside of housing. I've seen staff come into housing, leaving other careers too. So it goes both ways.
Well, yeah, and I guess like something I just thought of is like, for me, like I found working with like independent career coach very helpful, because I think like, and it's at least like obviously the communication is key here, but like, working with your supervisor, like sometimes it could be that idea of like, well, I don't want to lose you, or like, sometimes they're going to give you like the best advice or be very motivated, or like you as a supervisor may need to just like recognize where it's like, okay, I'm kind of like out of my depth here. Like, I don't want to like hold you back or like limit your sort of, sort of vista of opportunities here. So like, let me try to help you find a mentor who, totally objective is going to have like kind of maybe an outside perspective and going to help kind of be your, your Sherpa and your guide here to kind of go through, your career transitions and stuff. So like, that idea of at least like starting from a place, reaching out to your supervisor, because they could be like, yeah, like, we love working with you. You're amazing. Let's try to find you an opportunity within our team that's going to be more fulfilling for you, or within this institution, or, the division of student affairs or whatever. Like that idea of like, yeah, because obviously, like, I like working with you. You're great. Like, so let's keep you and try to keep you happy and keep you doing stuff that's meaningful for you. And then if it's like, okay, I'm going to add on my depth here, depending on what it is that you're looking for, where you're at in life or whatever else, it's like, let's not let ego get in the way. Like, please go find like, and I can help maybe make some intros for you, like to a great mentor who could, kind of guide you and, share their own reflections of their own story and stuff. So, I like, yeah, I feel like we're getting a very good kind of comprehensive sort of viewpoint here on like some good advice, some good tactical pieces here and kind of steps to work through. And, um, just a lot of good stuff to consider. So, final question here. If there's any kind of pieces of, or like resources, like different pieces that people could kind of pursue, like tools they could use to help kind of facilitate this sort of journey, these transitions, figuring out, where and what they, may want to do. Any resources that we could point folks to.
I already had mentioned about the value of mentors and supervisors, and I'll come back to that in just a second. But I also think if you know what you want and you know where you want to be, I wish there was just a magic website you can go to. There are helpful websites. Like if you're going to a different geographic area, make sure you check out that cost of living calculator over there. But while there's not an exact website for if you're ready for that next step or search or this or that, there's lots of great, amazing resources out there. But I think the best resource is a person or the people that are there for you. Um, if you go to a leadership conference of any sorts, if you're going to a Kuhuai or NASPA or ACPA or any of the regional conferences, have someone that knows a lot of people introduce you to a bunch of people while you're at those conferences. And for supervisors out there, you may be in both categories here. Someone that's considering a transition as well as someone who supervises. But for those supervisors, I I always am concerned when I hear employees, and my background, surprisingly, is actually in the human resources world. I never mentioned that before. That was my undergrad degree. And I always hear stories of people that don't want to tell supervisors they're searching because they feel like they're going to get blackballed or they're going to be not like they're going to be pushed out the moment they say it. That shouldn't be the way things are. In fact, if you tell a mentor or a supervisor you have a close rapport with that you're searching, they should be going out of their way to set you up for success. And if you're one of those supervisors, make sure that your staff feel comfortable having honest conversations about searches. If I know I have a staff member getting a master's degree or getting a doctorate at the end of a year and it's only January, and they tell me that, I will be doing everything I can to not only help them get that doctorate, but have a job lined up at the same time. But it's all about the communication too. So lots of different things going on in my head right now about how supervisors can best support their staff as well as how a staff member can seize those opportunities and everything. And I wish if you're going through this, I wish you all the best. But definitely work with your mentors. They're there for you.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great place to end it on here because I think like yeah, that idea of supervisors and folks like wherever you are like should be these kind of conduits, whether they're like providing if they are sort of the vessels for like support and guidance whatever else, or they should be able to like bring other things to you. And like I think the onus being on like the individual who is like looking to make transitions, like you do need to like hone that ask, as clear as you can. It's like, well, I'd like somebody who works in this kind of area, this and that. And like, yeah, they can maybe make some intros or yeah, be kind of, guiding you, like, and certainly just like conferences and things like can be a great resource here as well. But like, that idea of being in those spaces and places and having somebody who can like, be a guide, like making that sort of very direct ask of like, hey, I know we're going to a Kuhuai, we're going to NASPA, we're going to whatever. Like, if you could help introduce me to like these type of people that work in these type of positions or whatever, like that sort of really clear, specific ask, I think, will be that much more effective. But just really appreciate all that you shared, all you kind of reflected on and sort of motivated, inspired folks with here. Because I think, these are tough journeys, but they're important ones. And I think as much as we can just kind of keep getting good insights and things from folks, sharing their own unique stories and everything, it all just is really helpful. So, yeah, just thank you so much for hanging out and sharing all you did. It's been great chatting with you.
And thank you for having me, Dustin. It's been great. Thanks.